Hello, and welcome to our webinar series. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, you sound great, Vince. Thank you.
All right, excellent. Well, my name is Vince Fulgency, and I am with Vitech. Vitech, in conjunction with our partner MindSight, are pleased to offer you this webinar today on scripting for better customer service. It is another installment in our how-to series. We will also have a closing webinar in the month of December that I'll tell you a little bit about at the end of our presentation today. But today we're very excited to introduce Wil Sokanovic, that's fun to say, who is with Awaken Intelligence. I love the name of the company as well. Awaken Intelligence is much better than Awaken Stupidity. I've always thought it's best to just let stupidity sleep, whereas intelligence is great. Wil, welcome to the webinar.
Thank you.
And so you are welcome. Wil is uniquely qualified to speak on our subject today, in that Wil brings with him a background in contact centers, sitting on the other side of the desk. So unlike people who have lots of sales experience, namely me, but no experience actually managing and running contact centers, Wil brings to the table that knowledge of the hands-on and leadership in contact centers. So without further ado, Wil, please take it from here.
Thank you very much, Vince, and thank you for hosting today, inviting me in to do this presentation on scripting for better customer service. So as Vince mentioned, I've worked in contact centers for more years than I care to mention now, and the majority of those being in operations before moving across to technology. So we're going to talk about scripting for better customer service today. And if I just forward, the first thing that we want to address is some of the challenges that are faced within a contact center. And typically an organization will focus on those operational challenges, so the challenges that are facing the organization themselves, such as delivering a consistent message, customer experience, linking into CSAT scores, operational considerations such as the high training costs, the high turnover of staff, and staff that are skill specific as well. Second to that is the customer challenges that ensuring there's a good customer experience. So as we see, they're unbelievable. They really don't understand what I want. They make me wait to be connected to someone who's having a bad day, etc. So those customer experience metrics that are really forefront and are trending across the industry quite considerably at the moment. But what I think is very important, and that perhaps some organizations don't necessarily focus on as much as they should, are the agent challenges and frustrations. And anyone operating within a contact center will know, or anyone that's been an agent, so that's where I started my career as an agent on the phone. And I still remember how daunting it was waiting to get to that first call. And it's about the agent, and what do you mean I'm not saying the right way, I'm doing what you asked. There's so much to remember, mixed priorities. And so addressing the agent quality of life is really important in delivering a good customer service. And it's true what Richard Branson has been quoted on LinkedIn and many other social media platforms as saying, that you treat your frontline staff right, they're going to treat your customers right. And it's really that top-down approach to customer experience. It's really important, and where scripting can actually add a massive amount of value. So introduction to scripting. What is scripting? So it's the bread and butter of the BPO, the outsourcer, the TAS. It's been adopted heavily by outbound sales with sales scripts, etc. But it's now more predominant across industries that don't typically have that traditional need for scripting. So it's about defining process. A lot of people in the contact center industry still look at scripting in a bad light, so it can get a bad rep. And that's because scripting implemented in the wrong way can be damaging to organization. It can sound robotic, it can sound scripted, exactly as we talked to it right now. And there's ways to prevent it. So it's about delivering the appropriate information to the agent at the appropriate point throughout the conversation. So the agent has what they need to handle that interaction effectively, without having to think about what they did before and what they have to do next. And scripting, when done correctly, can really help the agent in their job role in terms of delivering that great customer experience to that caller.
Will, I think your point is right on there in that thinking about what does it take to help the agent help the customer and making that just a very smooth process for them is critical to the success of the contact center and delivery of an outstanding customer experience. So, you're right on with this. Thank you.
Absolutely. And operations know the outcome that they want, and they know how the message needs to be delivered to support both their brand and the process, the operation, making sure the data is correct. But where the disconnect is actually supporting the agent in achieving that. So yeah, absolutely. Then script, workflow, process, decision guide. So I say here they're different terms. They're all the same technology. As I mentioned, scripting can be seen as a slightly dirty word. Workflow, process, decision guide. They're all the same thing effectively. They're all ways of supporting the agent, and just perhaps people are more comfortable with different terminologies. And then there's different types of scripts, and different types of scripts will support different processes within the organization, within the contact center. So starting from the very basic, you've got the form-led script, and that's sort of the satisfaction survey or, the canvassing. You've got some questions and answers. It's very defined. The structure's very rigid. The agent works through that, and there's an outcome. And that suits a certain amount of call types. Then you've got dynamic. And this is where we really start to support a process where the actual content within a script can start to react to the journey the agent's taking with the caller. So depending upon certain selections made, data that's been input, could even be data from third-party systems, the script can dynamically react to that and drive the process. So if you think of a decision tree, if it's yes, you go in one direction, if it's no, you go in another. And a dynamic script will guide the agent and take them down that decision tree without the agent actually having to make any decisions for themselves. So the agent can concentrate on the interaction at hand. And the third one, and the one that I get most excited about, is the agent level application. Typically, you'll find within a contact center, there's multiple systems that an agent needs to be engaged with to complete a particular process. And that could be, a CRM, it could be an order system, their emails, for example. And jumping between different screens by default introduces a level of inefficiency. And the agent level application brings into the concept of a unified agent desktop, whereby the agent's interacting in a single space. And the underlying technology is leveraging integration points to deliver the information or pull information from the appropriate sources. So the agent has a single space to work in, but the technology is supporting the process. It's ensuring the data is where it needs to be by the time the call is finished.
Well, as we work our way across looking at the form, the dynamic, and the agent level, is the level of technology also increasing? It would just seem like a form it could be a piece of paper, and we're working our way across. It's getting more and more technology driven. Is that correct?
So in some respects, but typically it's the same technology that can support all three, because regardless of the approach within the process, be it that form, dynamic, or agent level application, you still have an amount of data. And for that data to be useful to the organization, it needs to reside somewhere. And that's why you'd use the same technology to drive the different levels of scripting. And within a contact center, you'll often find that different types of inquiry will support a different type of scripting. So you could have a customer service call where someone's already called before and they want to speak to a particular customer service rep, but that rep's not available. So a form supports that in that you take a name, a telephone number, the particular message, and you pass that on within the application. Whereas the same agent might get an inbound inquiry that's a new customer service inquiry, and that's where the dynamic scripting comes in. So it can be a combination of all of these within a single space.
Excellent, thank you.
So talking about some of the benefits, and as you'll see, we're gonna pull through some of those frustrations as mentioned in the previous slides. So what do you mean? I'm not saying the right thing. I'm doing what you asked. And so the first thing that we're going to touch on in terms of what scripting can deliver is control over the agent-customer interaction. And the first one there, defining the process. So as you'll see on the right-hand side, we've got a very complicated process. There's different branches. Asking an agent to follow that, or at least remember it, is close to impossible. So once you start to define the process in a tool set that is designed to guide and support the agent, it means that the operational team can better leverage control over the interaction. And by default, that moves us on to the next point where you start to enable consistency. So because the agent's following a process that's been defined for them, it's supporting them in their job role, they're going to deliver the same experience regardless of the agent, regardless of the caller. So if you call up one time, you have an experience. You call up a second time, you have the same experience. And you start to breed that consistency within the contact center so that no matter which agent handles the call, the experience for the customer will always be the same. And there's numerous studies that have shown that by default, that improves customer experience. When you know the experience is going to be on point, it's going to be the same every time, that you're not going to have to jump through different loopholes every single time you talk to someone different. That improves your customer experience. And so then supporting the agent and the business. So, it's a win-win here. So supporting the agent in this way supports the business as a whole because it ensures that processes are followed, that the pertinent data is captured in every call, and importantly, the data ends up where it needs to be. You also have a benefit in that you get data accuracy at source, which is really important. So, quality control, call monitoring, etc., is a massive thing for contact centers. Where you can ensure that data accuracy at source exists, you reduce the burden on that team as well. And finally, helping the agents to improve. So with the right solutions that measure what's happening in the contact center or what has happened, we can start to help the agents understand how to improve. Whilst we're talking about scripting on this particular webinar, there are many other technologies that are on the leading edge of customer experience within a contact center that can help that, including call analytics, translation software, etc. There's some really exciting innovations within technology for the contact center that are really going to impact upon customer experience. So, I've quit better jobs than this. I've worked in contact centers, as I've mentioned, a very long time, and an agent's job is not an easy job. Outside world will see that, they sit on the phone all day, they talk, have a few conversations, they go home at the end of it, and that is not the reality of the situation. There's a massive amount of stress on an agent. The number of incoming calls, how many calls are waiting to be answered, what's my average handling time, have I done this correctly, did I miss to tell the customer this thing? And so providing them with a tool set that actually supports them in terms of a scripting application allows them to concierge the interaction. So you start with quicker training times. Now, training is a massive burden on any contact center. So you might have noticed from the accent, I'm not from the US. And in the UK, on average, it costs £6,500. So we're talking around $8,000 to actually hire an agent, the whole process, start to finish, from getting them recruited to getting them live within the contact center. And with a current retention rate of somewhere around 75%, so we're talking attrition of 25 to 30%. That's a significant cost burden on any contact center. So, with the processes guided, those steps within the process is clearly defined. And with the instructions specific to different processes and call types, you can actually remove the bulk of process-specific knowledge transfer within the training. Once the agent is familiar with the concept of scripting, the particular application you've implemented, it's then the application that actually takes the agent through that process and guides them every step of the way. which means that onboarding and training are both, as a significant investment, are significantly reduced. So the scripting application actually allows you to realize that investment in a much shorter time frame. And so from hired to live, so initial training, ongoing training doesn't need to focus on an end-to-end process in detail. It can focus on the application, general navigation, and process nuances. Every contact center is going to have process nuances, little variances that are specific to certain call types. But all this means that your agents go from hired to production ready in a significantly shorter period of time, and that can reduce the initial training cost per agent quite significantly as well.
Well, I'm really glad you brought that up because I think turnover, at least in contact centers in the States, is a significant issue. I mean, many centers operate at 25, 30, 35%. I've even seen some as high as 75%. And when we're looking at costs, and really I think 8,000 is probably on the low end of what startup costs, especially when you're looking at weeks of classroom plus side by side, and you go through the whole process and get to the end of 2 or 3 months and the agent quits within a week. So you've really hit the nail on the head here, where we can alleviate a lot of the training and investment in that to be able to get an agent on the floor quicker and delivering high levels of customer satisfaction.
Right. And whilst we don't have time to go into it today, that's it's a double-edged knife. It cuts two ropes at the same time, because whilst you can get people hired quickly, once you're supporting the agent, you're focusing on the agent quality of life, you're improving their job experience, then they're less likely to leave. So you can also reduce your attrition as well, which is a really exciting thing to consider. Process knowledge protection. And I think this is something that is under considered in contact centers. So we spoke about attrition, that agents turn over quite quickly. But anyone in the contact center will agree that you have your stalwarts, you have those agents that remain with you through thick and thin. They've been with you 5, 10, 15 years. In my operational roles, I had agents that had been with me or been with the organization, at least within the contact center, for 15 years. And they're the beating heart of the contact center. They've got their support of the peers, they know your processes, they're fully invested in your brand. But then they introduce a risk, because so much of that knowledge is in their head. So what about safeguarding those processes? Actually, being able to share that knowledge. So taking that process from that experience gained, or maybe even like a paper-based repository, and building them out into an application starts to safeguard those processes permanently. And talking to those brand champions, those people that have been with you for a long time, you can really start to integrate some considerable experience into the scripts that the rest of your agents are going to start to follow. So you start to breed that across the entire contact center base, not just those, star performers. And we say which version. So I've been to so many contact centers where they still use paper-based. I had one which dealt with health insurance in the UK, and they had a Bible of the different processes, the different types of calls, and they had to flick through these papers at the start of every call, find the appropriate flow for the call they were handling, and then they could go into it. That's not a good experience for the agent. More importantly, that's not a good experience for the customer either. So creating a central repository for the benefit of all means that you start to eliminate the risk of document management error, and importantly, knowledge that one agent may hold that's not held elsewhere. And then multi-skilled agents by default. So knowledge is no longer siloed, it's accessible across the business. And by multi-skilled agents by default, I've been in contact centers where you have a team that deal with one type of call, you have another team that deal with social, a team that deal with emails. And resourcing a contact center is a fine art. You've got to balance the wage bill versus the incoming call volume, link it back to the talk time, etc. And then all of a sudden you have a weather event or someone phones in sick, and you don't have as many agents as you thought you did. Now, having all of your processes within an application means that you can pull an agent away from their job that's their norm because they might be perfectly well staffed, and you can move them into an understaffed area without having to give them loads of specific training because they're used to the application supporting their job role. They follow the application in that new position. So you get multi-skilled agents by default, which is really powerful to any contact center. Um, and then average handling time. So one of the core metrics of any contact center, and improving the average handling time is the holy grail. So delivering the information to the agent at the appropriate point of the conversation means that the agent doesn't ever have to think about what's next or what have I missed. They're empowered by the workflows or the scripts throughout the conversation, which reduces the average handling time by default. They don't have to think about those things. They can just follow the flow. They can concentrate on the customer. So you get that reduction in average handling time, but you also are able to maintain quality, and that gives you a more efficient workforce. So, I'm not going to make any assumptions. So on the right-hand side here, we've got AHT, average handling time. That drives into MPH, minutes per hour, which then drives into calls per hour, which then goes into your full-time equivalent or your FTE. So the more efficient you make your workforce, the less FTE you are requiring to deliver the same service to the same level of interactions, meaning that your costs in the contact center go down.
Thank you for that explanation, Will, because I was really thinking that was miles per hour, which led to your CPA, certified public accountant, to pay the bill for the ticket that you get. So I'm glad. No, just kidding. So, and average handle time is something that I think every contact center keeps an eye on. And while we all strive to keep it shorter, we would never, ever recommend that someone give an agent an objective to have a shorter AHT, because they absolutely will deliver that, and it will not be a pretty picture.
No, you make a really good point, and that drives into one of the previous points that we talked about, if scripting's not done properly, it's not going to be effective. And certainly giving an agent a target in terms of their AHT is going to just make them robotic. They're going to run through that call. They're going to say what's on the screen. They're going to be very clinical about it. They're not going to deliver a great customer experience. And if you
I can just hear it now. Thanks for calling. Gotta go. Bye.
Yeah, exactly. And if you look online, there's a trend that AHT isn't the same metric it used to be. It's not quite at the forefront of contact center consideration. It's all about customer experience and if the customer goes away happy. And whilst I think that's a really great concept, I don't think we're ever going to move away from the fact that AHT is one of the core drivers into the cost efficiency of your contact center. And from an operational perspective, you can't ignore that. You've got to consider AHT in line with customer experience, and that's where these technologies can really support that new perspective. And so the last one I wanted to touch on is compliance. So many contact centers exist within an industry that is regulated, and there are certain tick boxes or hoops that have to be jumped through to meet those regulatory requirements. And it's important that when saying and doing the correct thing is fundamental to the success of the business, that the agents are appropriately supported to do so. So where contact centers have that compliance need, scripting can be an invaluable ally to meet those needs. So by that I mean enshrining those processes in a scripting application means your agents will never forget those required statements or to go through the necessary IDMV or DPA. I had a customer and they work globally in health insurance, and they have a significantly resourced team of people that listen to 100% of calls, where 40% have to be recalled due to regulatory failure on the agent's behalf. So you can see we're adding something like a scripting application that supports the process, reminds the agent or doesn't even let the agent progress until they've met those requirements can significantly reduce operational costs. And the last point there, now it's verbatim. And compliance is one area where verbatim scripting might be required. In the UK, we have the direct debit guarantee. It has to be read word for word. And agents that can be effortlessly provided with the appropriate wording at the appropriate point in the conversation, meaning that they don't skip it, they don't miss a beat. At the end of that call, it's a compliant call, there's no issues, and the customer goes away happy. And there's many more benefits. And we don't have all day, unfortunately, but we've spoken around increased agent retention to a degree, and the dynamic workforce feeds into those multi-skilled agents. And to be fair, improved agent quality of life is something that I'm a genuine advocate for, and the reduction of operational time. But there's so much more that we can delve into on all of those points. So we've tried to give you an overview of how scripting can better support an operation, deliver a great agent experience, customer success, agent quality of life. And so I'd like to open the floor to any questions that might be floating around.
Excellent. Thank you, Will. I'll just give everyone a chance for a moment. If you have a question, please go ahead and submit that, and we'll get your questions answered as quickly as we can. It looks like we have one that just came in. So how does scripting work when there are other systems the agent needs to interact with? Can it still be effective?
Absolutely, and it's where scripting can be sometimes the most effective. And we spoke earlier about the unified agent desktop. So, a good application that supports your processes will seamlessly integrate to your back office systems or peripheral systems. So what you're doing is you're reducing the amount of real estate on the screen the agent has to interact with. You're creating a single space. And through those integration points, the scripting application captures the data, guides the process, that information is then pushed and or pulled to the appropriate repositories. So those systems still end up with the appropriate data in the appropriate place, just the agent hasn't had to faff about switching from screen to screen and inputting data in multiple places.
Excellent. Will, this next question gets right to the heart of it. So don't most scripting applications require, and then this is in quotation marks, expensive development resource to administer scripts, creation, and changes?
Yeah, that's a really good point. So not all scripting applications are created equal. Some of the incumbent ones that perhaps the telephony providers might offer you as part of the dialer package, they can typically be quite burdensome to maintain. You need a developer, it's all HTML, etc. It's effectively serving you web pages. But there's a revolution in the contact center industry, and it's this low code, no code. I don't believe in no code, so let's talk about low code, where it's drag, drop, and configure. And certainly our approach at Awaken Intelligence to delivering a scripting application has been accessible to a business user. So a business user can build out those scripts, they can maintain those scripts. It's done via drag, drop, configure, so that you don't need a developer level resource to actually fulfill that.
Excellent. Excellent. And then another question. In this mixed media world that we live in now, where many contact centers processes many electronic interactions, emails, chat, text, etc., isn't scripting a solution only for voice?
Yeah, absolutely not. So channel is all about how the customer contacts you. The inquiries are going to be the same. They're going to be the same along lines. They're still going to have a process behind them. So in our offering, for example, we have connectors for Twitter, Facebook, email. They can all be handled within a script. So you can still define the process. Where appropriate, you can have automatic canned responses. And you can deliver those efficiencies into those other channels, as well as to your voice channel.
Excellent. Thank you. So I don't see any other questions coming in. Will, what is your preference if someone wants to see the state-of-the-art in a unified desktop solution and how this actually works? What's your preference in how they could sign up for a demonstration?
Okay, so Awaken are working in partnership with Vitech and MindSight, so please reach out to Vince directly. He can connect you with me, and in partnership, we can take you through a demonstration of the scripting application. As you can see, our offering expands beyond just scripting. So if any of the other take your interest as well, please go via Vince at Vitech and the people at MindSight to get in touch with me, and we'll arrange that.
Great. Thank you so much. Will, thank you for sharing your knowledge, and thank you to all of the attendees, and I hope you were able to eat your lunch and enjoy some tasty morsels with these tasty bits of knowledge that we passed along. The next webinar will be in December, and it's on motivation without money. I think it's going to be a terrific topic, and at a great time of year, we'll have some fun with that one for sure. So thank you all. Take care and best wishes.
Thank you, Vince.